Hi everyone, Matiram here again with another RPG Talks book review. And today we are stepping outside of the brown and green splat books to look at the Illithiad by Bruce R. Cordell. This was published in 1996 by Wizards of the Coast, still under the TSR imprint, and is the third in a series called the Monstrous Arcana Series. The aim of this series was to take a deeper look at some monsters that are very typically Dungeons and Dragons. The three that they did were the Sahuagin, the Beholders, and with this text, the Illithiads. So let's go ahead and take a look and see how they did. So overall, the book is split into 9 chapters. Now, the first thing that I want to draw attention to before I talk about the chapters is the different style and layout of this book. You can definitely see Wizards of the Coast fingerprints pretty much all over this thing, as it bears visually a lot more of the feel of your later Wizards of the Coast publications, particularly the stuff that came out during 3rd edition, which is certainly different for 2nd edition, and I don't think is horribly distracting here. So I definitely would count that as a plus. We start off with Chapter 1 being a general overview of the Illithiads. It talks about their anatomy, their various abilities, and in the anatomy section, I really love some of the artwork here that I want to draw your attention to. There is a picture basically of, looks like somebody was doing an autopsy on an illithid. So it's like cut open, and you get to see literally like inside the abdomen of the illithid. You get to take a real close, like magnified look at their mouth, their eyes, the sort of a cutaway of the tentacles. It's very, very in-depth and very, very interesting. Certainly more in-depth than any treatment of these creatures that we've had up to this point. Then we move on to Chapter 2, which discusses its life cycle and the variations on the Illithids. And it's cool because it takes you basically from how they go as eggs all the way up to adults, again with a lot of really great artwork. It's very evocative, and you have a lot of information here talking about different types of Illithids, the elder brains that rule their society, even illithid liches and vampires. So definitely a lot of great ideas for a wide variety of games. Chapter 3 goes into psionics, options, abilities, and drawbacks. And obviously, being a primarily psionic race, this goes into quite a bit of detail on their various powers. The one thing that I do note that for me makes it a little less than useful is that they actually use the newer rules for psionic powers that were released in the later parts of 2nd edition, which includes like a mental armor class and that sort of thing, as opposed to the power scores that are discussed in the Complete Psionics Handbook. And I never really liked that system. And that's kind of the default here, which I thought was a little strange. We then go on to Chapter 4, where it talks about the history and the theology of the Illithids. And this is of particular interest because it certainly ties in the stuff out of Spelljammer, where they come from, which is certainly interesting in that it kind of takes that as a default, but it gives some other potential options for like different ideas from where they come from. Then we talk a little bit about the Illithid gods, and it actually fleshes out 2 of them, Illithid and Mazakorian, and I'll be honest, they basically come across as very similar, although they do talk about how Mazakorian is currently a dead god, so it gives you both a living and a dead god for the Illithids. Chapter 5 goes on to the psychology and the society of the Illithids, which I think is actually probably my favorite part, because it really helps get you inside the mind, so to speak, of the Illithids, specifically focusing on several beliefs of theirs, and it kind of breaks down what these various beliefs mean in terms of the society and why the society is shaped like it is based on these beliefs. And it even goes so far as to talk about Illithid emotions and their concepts of time. And it really digs deep into their society and how the Illithids interact with each other, with their elder brains. And then it goes into several groups that they call creeds, which are basically, I mean, to another race, they might almost be religions. These sort of base belief structures that Illithids build their societies around. And I think it's very interesting because it helps to give you different options for presenting the Illithids in your game. Because if you have an Illithid that is followers of one of these creeds, they can come out very, very different from each other because their whole goals and worldview are decidedly different. Then we go into chapter 5 does also end with a little discussion about the Gith races, the Githzerai and the Githyanki, and how they interact with the Illithids. Again, just a lot of great information that builds a lot to help you kind of make the Illithids a unique threat in your campaign. Then in chapter 6, we actually get a example Illithid community. And it's got everything from maps of the caverns to a very detailed discussion of every sort of section of an example Illithid town. Again, you basically have stats here for guardian creatures. I mean, you could really just take this whole chapter and throw it into the middle of an adventure and really not have to change much of anything. It's very detailed in that effect. Then we go to Chapter 7, and Chapter 7 is, in my opinion, the weakest of the chapters. It talks about Illithid technology, and this is kind of where I think they come the closest to jumping the shark in this book, because they give the Illithids, I mean, for lack of a better term, I almost want to say like steampunk-looking equipment. And, I mean, stuff like glare goggles. I mean, some of the images that they show in here, like I like the art for most of this book, but it looks a little silly seeing an Illithid in like this spiked leather armor with an eye patch with his artificial tentacle extensions, or another one who literally looks like he just came out of a steampunk novel, like big goggles and a helmet. They look a little silly, but if this is the weakest thing this book has to offer, I'll take it. So then Chapter 8 ends with your what they call the Mind Flayer Quick Stat Reference. It's basically a stat block for all the creatures that they mentioned in the book. And it's nice that they kind of put this all in one chapter at the very end, because, again, it makes a great, handy, quick reference. And the section of this, or that leads into, is the monsters section. And this is a couple of kind of stat pages for things that are not specifically Illithids, your elder brains, and a couple of other things. But the coolest part about this chapter is the artwork that leads into it. And it's basically one of those pictures where they kind of line up different races and show your different heights. But in this one, it's got a standard Illithid, like the Illithid leaders, Roper, a brain golem, which is a creature they talk about Illithids being able to make, and a vampire golem, all right next to or vampire Illithid, I'm sorry, right next to each other. And it really, I mean, it's great artwork. I love looking at the picture, and I don't know, it speaks for itself. I think that's probably the best part, is the artwork here is in and of itself good enough to give you a lot of ideas for things that you can do with Illithids in your campaign. So all in all, general thoughts. The pros for this book, the information that they provide on the Illithids' life cycles, society, psychology, is all flat out amazing. It definitely takes a monster that is very limited in scope in the monster manual and expanded it like crazy. And with this book, you could very easily run an entire campaign based on Illithiads. Because it just, I mean, it gives you so much to work with, and I think that's awesome. Point two, and I didn't mention this earlier, there are some very unique Illithid specific magic, or not magic, psionic powers in here, having to do a lot with sort of how Illithids look at time. Like they have a power called Collapse Time, which lets them essentially collapse the flow of time into a physical material that they can use to work their technology and magic. There's Intrusive Taste Link, which is just a weird one, but it basically allows the Illithid to taste what some other creature tastes. And it's kind of weird, but it plays into one of the creeds, the Abysmals, who are all about the sensory delights of brain eating. And it's just something you wouldn't see in any other book, which gives them a very unique take on their own powers. And again, as I've gushed about it since the beginning, the artwork in this book is nothing less than absolutely amazing. There's a lot of folks credited here for the illustrations, and I'll be honest, most of them I don't recognize. So it's interesting to see these, I'm going to guess, newcomers just totally rock it. I do note that they do credit two different graphic designers for the book, Dawn Murren and Matt Adelsperger, and you can definitely tell that the look and the art design of the book was a high priority, and I think it definitely pays off. It's certainly worth the price of admission there. The cons, and I'll be honest, I am scraping the bottom of the barrel for this one. But the thing that jumped out as a con for me is the strange and possibly anachronistic items in the technology section. It was sort of the one part of the book that just had me scratching my head. And I'll be honest, I think if you took out that whole chapter, I mean, you could just kind of rip that whole chapter out and throw it away. This would be about as close to as perfect a monster book as I could think of putting together. So all in all, I am going to give a solid 5 out of 5 rating with this book because I certainly feel that the strong points of the book outweigh the few sort of nitpicky cons that I've managed to come up with. And if you like Illithids, or if you don't like Illithids and just want some ideas on a strange alien-like race that you can terrify your players with, this book is definitely worth going out and hunting down. One of the things I don't have in my personal collection, but I definitely would like to have, are the 3 adventures that go with this. One of the great things about the Monstrous Arcana books is that for each of the books they released 3 adventures that focus on those monsters. And I certainly want to get those and check them out for myself, because if they draw heavily from this book, they can't help but be very interesting. So definitely go out, check it out, and add it to your collection. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you have your own thoughts about Illithids or the Illithiad, feel free to leave them in the comments. Also, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I'm trying to slowly work my way through the entire collection of 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons products, and mainly to educate and to get people recognizing the amazing amount of great work that TSR and later Wizards did in this set. So definitely, if you have any other products that you would like me to prioritize and get to, leave them down below as well. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.